Welcome to On Texas Football. Time for the Saturday morning conversation. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Rod Babers and CJ Vogel. This episode of On Texas Football brought to you by our friends over at Duck Camp all week long. Duck Camp has sponsored the College Football Playoff Week here on Texas Football. Make sure you check them out, duckcamp.com. We'll talk a little bit more about them later. But now we got to talk about what's going on today, 3 o'clock on TNT. Texas takes on Clemson. Longhorns 12-point favorites, guys. 50-plus point over/under. Is it going to get that? I mean, I just can't. I can't see Texas and Clemson going into a scoring battle here. But that's what Vegas says right now. What are y'all's thoughts about this game? Let's talk first about the Texas offense versus the Clemson defense. Rod B., I'm going to start with you. Where should this Texas offense land against Clemson later today?
Yeah, it all comes down to whether they can run the football or not. And if Texas can run the football effectively, I think it'll open up a lot more of the playbook. It'll, I think, mitigate some of the risk involved with the offense because, at Clemson defense, they are a havoc-minded group. Top 10 tackles for loss, top 25 in sacks, top 10 in takeaways per game. I mean, they really get after you. But if you're running the football and you're running it effectively, you got balance in the offense, then I think ultimately you can neutralize or negate a lot of the exotic pressures. TJ Parker was probably their best player on defense. He's still a good run defender, but he is a great elite pass rusher. So I think you negate some of his effectiveness as well. So if they can run the football, and that'll be about how effective they are running the wide zone, the counters, those are kind of their key concepts in the running game. And if Clemson can stop those concepts, bottle the Texas run game up a little bit, then I think Texas could have some issues. But I anticipate Texas being able to run the football. I don't think they're going to be dominant in the running game against Clemson, but I think they'll be effective in the running game, effective enough to give some reprieve to Quinn Ewers in the passing game and allow them to get the play action and the RPO game working. So I feel good about that, but I will say that Clemson secondary, they can man up pretty well, and we'll see how they match up. I think Texas has the advantage of them matching up against the Texas receivers, but I think they will try to match up, man up, put another guy in the box to stop that Texas run game early on, and we'll see what Texas can do when they try to even the numbers in the box.
Will they blitz a bunch, you think? You think Clemson can bring the pressure?
If they can get Texas in predictable passing situations, but early on, I think they're just going to try to see if they can stop the Texas running game and stop that outside zone. And if they can, and we've seen Texas, be inconsistent offensively when they don't have the element of the running game. But I think the Texas struggles in the running game were a Georgia-specific issue. I think against, Kentucky and against A&M, I think they did truly find their identity in the run game. It's just Georgia's a bad matchup for them. I think they'll be able to find that again, that rhythm in the run game again versus Clemson.
CJ, what do you think about this offensive matchup for the Longhorns versus the Clemson defense?
Yeah, to me, it all comes down to red zone efficiency. We've seen Texas move the ball against everybody they've played so far this year. Just throughout the season, especially in the second half, you've seen those red zone woes pop back up from 2023, and they've come at very inopportune times, right? The two drives in the third quarter against Texas A&M both ended up in turnovers and -7 points on the board. You can't have that in the college football playoff. You have 6 drives that reach the 25 or 30-yard line of Georgia's in the SEC championship game. You only score 1 touchdown, right? And that came from 40 yards away. So it's not like they're inching up and completing drives. They're inching up and going backward, whether it be penalties, sacks, negative run plays. Can't have that. You got to find ways to continue getting that ball across the line of scrimmage, finish drives, put the ball in the end zone. That's how you win football games, not with kicks, because we've seen how sporadic that can get as well. It's all about getting into the end zone, and I think that starts with Gunnar Helm and his involvement there. I'd obviously like to see the run game as well, but we'll see, and ultimately there's got to be a little bit better play from Quinn Ewers as well.
Yeah, I love CJ and Rod, what Rod said about mitigating the risk of Quinn Ewers. The one thing they can't do is turn the ball over.
Yep.
And Clemson is good at making, y'all mentioned it, Clemson's good at making the other team turn the ball over. And that's been the bugaboo with Quinn Ewers last couple of weeks, all right, or last couple of outings, and something that, Texas has not played a clean game on offense since, Florida? 5 games ago?
Yeah.
So at some point, you just ask yourself, okay, what is this offense? Is it a 20-point-a-game offense in conference against good competition, or is it a 30-point offense? Earlier in the year against good competition, I was thinking they were 34-point game offense. Late in the year, they've been a 20-point offense, right? So which version of Texas do we get later today? That's going to be interesting. Now, Rod, the Texas defense against Clemson, Texas should have a distinct advantage here.
Yeah.
But I got to be honest, I'm a little concerned because Cade Klubnik is on a little bit of a run right now in some ways, right? He's a young man from Westlake coming back home to play against the Longhorns.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing like, one of the top 10 best quarterbacks in college football. And this is, if you look at explosive plays of 20-plus yards or more, Clemson is the most explosive offense that Texas has played up until this point in the season. And that's because of Cade Klubnik and his dual threat ability. So, yes, that is to me, the biggest X factor, right, in this matchup is that a dual threat quarterback already causes a lot of problems. We saw that second half versus Georgia, what a dual threat quarterback can do. Your safety's got to be slow. They got to slow play everything. Backside of the run play's got to slow play everything. Changes the match, changes the numbers in the run game. So that could be an issue. And I think they're going to run Cade Klubnik a lot. I expect him to have double-digit design run plays in this matchup. But then also, a guy can extend plays. So once the play breaks down, scramble drill. We've seen that work against Texas with some explosive plays in this season so far. But this defense has been so dominant. Yes, I do think Clemson will be able to make some plays in the passing game because Cade Klubnik is just that good. But I don't think they're going to have much of a running game. Their running game has really started to, it started to slide off the cliff really a little bit. Once Phil Maffa started dealing with an injury, he's got a shoulder injury. He's really tough, so he's playing through it. But at the end of the season, he's going to require surgery on the shoulder. Their backup running back, Haynes, is out for the season. And the last 4 games against FBS opponents, they're barely averaging a little over 4 yards per rush. Against this Texas defense, the best defense they've faced so far, I don't know if they're going to be able to run the football against Texas with the injuries. Also, the offensive line, guys. Last 3 weeks, the offensive line and maybe they're healthier now, but the offensive line has had some key injuries as well. Had a couple of guys out for the season, actually, on the interior of that offensive line this last couple of weeks. And they're not in a good place in their running game to be going up against Texas on the road against the best defense in the country. I think that's worrisome, and I think that's ultimately why the hero ball that Cade Klubnik is going to have to play to beat Texas, he's going to basically prove himself to be worthy of being drafted really high by the NFL, or he's going to, I think ultimately end up kind of a victim of the circumstance, just not having enough support around him.
CJ, Rod mentioned support. He does have some young receivers that you like. Tell us a little bit about the other guys that are weapons for Clemson that we'll be hearing about later today.
Yeah, in regards to the Texas, we've talked about how that circle of trust started at 6, and it's kind of since dwindled down to about 4.5, maybe 4. Look, Texas likes to distribute the ball a little bit more than Clemson. Clemson has 4 guys, and those are their 4 guys, and they're pretty talented, right? You look at TJ Moore, you look at Antonio Williams, Bryant Wesco as their wide receivers. All of them have 60 or more targets. You add in Jake Brenningstool, the tight end, 60 or more targets. Only one player on Texas's roster has 60 or more targets this year, and it's Matthew Golden. However, you start looking at players that Texas can distribute the ball to more. They have 7 players with 40 or more targets. Back to Clemson, only those 4 who have north of 60 hit that 40 mark. So you see the circle of trust is very, very thin at Clemson, but that's who they ride or die with. And those guys have made a lot of big plays. You look at TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco, both of their average distance of target sitting right around 14 yards. It's pretty far when you consider how often they've been targeted this year and how often they've been successful. Bryant Wesco, of course, 18 yards per reception. He's found the end zone 5 times. But it's going to be Antonio Williams, who is the number 1 wide receiver for the Clemson Tigers. 95 targets on the year. He's turned that into 10 touchdowns. It's a pretty good hit rate right there. And we've seen in the red zone specifically, if it's not Williams, it's Brenningstool that they like to hit in the red zone. They got a full-on 4 wide receiver deep attack. But to Rod's point, if you take away the run, what does that matter, right? You're one-dimensional, and that plays into Texas's hands.
That Brenningstool is a really big tight end. He is a mismatch physically for a Michael Taft or Andrew Makuba a little bit. He's a long arm tight end. Like he's a taller version of Gunnar Helm, essentially. Yeah. Not sure he runs as well as Gunnar, but you get my point. He's like a mismatch physically for a pair of Texas safeties that aren't the biggest safeties, right? Especially in coverage. Now, they should be able to do it. And Andrew Makuba's understanding of the Clemson offense should be a little thing. One thing I was going to ask you both on this. What about Cade Klubnik as a runner? Gunnar Stockton is not a runner, right? Yet he had success running the quarterback draw against Texas. Clemson runs the quarterback draw quite a bit. Was Texas just not prepared for the quarterback draw against Georgia, or is that something that that Clemson's going to try and try to get away with a little bit, I guess, as the game goes on later today?
Look, I think you'll see some design plays, whether it be, maybe not as many powers right or left with Cade Klubnik, but you'll see the design draw, you'll see the rollouts. That's just take advantage of the athlete that you have. And Cade Klubnik's a heck of an athlete. He's up there on yards. He's up there on attempts, 89 attempts, 550 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns. But here's the kicker. He's got 8 fumbles on the year. Now, some of that is in the pocket. Texas has been able to create some strip sacks already, and at least recently, right? Trey Moore, Colin Simmons, Vernon Broughton, they've all gotten hands on the quarterback in the pocket. 8 fumbles for Cade Klubnik's pretty interesting, but I have to imagine that's at least a big part of the Clemson offensive attack. Otherwise, I'd be sitting there thinking, maybe they're leaving some money on the counter right there with the athlete they have at quarterback.
Hey, I got to ask you, CJ, you are the stat hound of the group here a little bit. Any surprising numbers in the special teams department that you think may be a little revealing?
Yeah, look, you look at Hauser, the kicker. I know he landed the 56-yard field goal for the win against SMU in the ACC championship game. Heck of a kick, heck of a moment. Prior to that, he was just 2 of 5 on kicks beyond 40 yards. So it's one of those situations where it's a little less than a coin flip in terms of if they're kicking deep. I think you see them be a little bit more aggressive and rely on their third-year quarterback with Cade Klubnik there.
Okay, good stuff. Obviously, Texas dealing with its own special teams issues in the last couple games. Not only Burt Auburn with some issues, but also you got to think they had a punt block and they had a 4th down punt play fake go against them against Georgia. So in back-to-back games, the special teams units for Texas have not been really special. All right, it's time for the prediction of what we think here. I'm going to go first, guys. I'm going to go 2013 Longhorns. That's the under and Texas not covering. I've got to be honest. I think this is going to be what we at some point you are what you are. Texas has been telling us who they are the last quarter of this season.
Yep.
And that's that they score 20 to 24 points or so, unless you're playing a Kentucky that really couldn't play dead on offense at half for 3 quarters of the game, right? At some point you just say, okay, you are who you are. And I'm not sure Texas is due a big breakout on offense. Maybe they are. I mean, certainly hope that happens. But, I'm going 2013 Longhorns. I think that the Texas defense in the red zone, in particular, against Garrett Riley is going to be very big. I mean, you're looking at a 3rd-year starting quarterback. This is the best quarterback Texas has faced all year, in my opinion. Okay? You're going to have to play well in the red zone to hold them to a couple of field goals. They're going to move the ball enough. He's got just too much. You mentioned the big plays, Rod. They're going to have to buckle down in the red zone and force field goals instead of touchdowns. Texas 20-13. Rod B, you're up next, buddy.
Well, I'm going 27-17 Texas. They don't cover the number. They damn near get there, though. I think Texas pulls away in the second half. I think first half, these teams kind of trade haymakers in the first half. Both of these teams start really strong. Texas has 3rd quarter woes, but Clemson may be one of the worst 4th quarter teams in the country. They actually have a negative point differential in the 4th quarter. They've been outscored in the 4th quarter. And I think that's where Texas ultimately pulls away. They win 27-17. And like you said, Bobby, yeah, it may not necessarily look very pretty offensively, but it doesn't have to be when your defense can smother teams the way Texas defense can do it. So I'll say Texas shows up, gets 10-point win.
You're choosing the Waffle House plan, smothered and covered.
Smothered.
For the Longhorn team. All right, what about you, CJ?
Yeah, I think this is a game where you see Texas find some offensive rhythm. I do. And, how much of that will we see be a result of the Texas offense versus the Clemson defense? Well, look, teams have been able to score on Clemson this year. They have good players. They have a good front seven. I think they're young in the back end, but this has to be a game where Texas punches it in. I think Sark's going to be uber aggressive, maybe a little too aggressive at times, just understanding the stakes. But I like 30-17 Texas. That's my final prediction.
Wow.
I think 30 points is on the table for the Longhorns. Again, they've been able to move the ball. It's all about scoring, and being at home, I think, is going to be one of those big factors that says, okay, they can get the ball into the end zone here.
No fumbles and no turnovers, man.
Clean game.
Clean game. We get that. I think we're excited later this evening. All right, I want to say thanks to Duck Camp, guys. We mentioned them sponsoring all week here on college football playoff week. Duck Camp gear is made for the people that live for the moments out there where there are fish to catch, birds to hunt, time to kill, football to watch. They like doing all that stuff, so they built a company centered on it, based here in Austin, and dedicated to giving people best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel. There are those of you out there that look forward to the opening day of hunting season and the kickoff of Longhorn football with the same fervor and excitement of a 5-year-old on Christmas morning. Duck Camp is here to let you know that from opening day to game day, they've got you covered. It is the place where you can get out there and stay out there and make the most of every second with the gear they have. Here's to great seasons, y'all. Yes, hunting and football. Shop hunting gear now at duckcamp.com. They also allowed us to host a couple of coffee and football guys on Thursday and Friday morning. It was really fun being out there with everybody and seeing it. They have a great store downtown on East Cesars Chavez there. All right, let's look at the other games. That's what we normally do here on the Saturday Conversation with CJ and Rod and myself. Rod, I'm going to go to you first. As normal, I kind of do this quite a bit with you, but let's talk about the first game of the day that's coming up closest to us, and that's Penn State SMU. We saw what happened last night with Indiana Notre Dame, but Penn State SMU. What are your thoughts on this game? Favored by 8.5 or so, Penn State is. I think it's going to be 20 degrees at kickoff with a 15 or 13 mile an hour wind. That sounds like Rod B weather to me, right? That's what you had growing up in Houston.
Oh, yeah, no, man. I trust me. I worry about whether SMU can adapt to that kind of weather. We never have to talk about this really in the playoffs of college football before, but much like the NFL this time of year, there's no doubt it's a factor, and I think it's no question it's advantageous to Penn State. Penn State's going to have the line of scrimmage advantage, I think, in this matchup too. I think ultimately that's what flips it in Penn State's favor. I think SMU, though, the game plan, at least to be able to limit that offense at Penn State. I mean, the offense, the passing game is going to go through the tight end. So if you can, they have really good safety play for SMU. So if that matchup, if SMU matches up really well and they can limit the tight end, I think they actually, in the passing game, potentially, especially with their pass rush, they've actually made a win. They may be able to win more than their fair share of those snaps. I'm worried that SMU won't be able to necessarily stop them in the running game, and they'll win the lines of scrimmage. And of course, the weather kind of fits that Penn State advantage there, which is, hey, we're just going to pound the rock against them. So I'll take Penn State in this matchup. But I like SMU. If this was at a neutral site, I think SMU probably could pull the upset because I don't usually trust James Franklin in a big game. But I do think the advantages are overwhelming in this matchup. So I'll take Penn State.
Too big. When you say advantages are overwhelming, you think it's the guys up front?
I think I think lines of scrimmage, potentially on both sides of the ball. And I do think that weather, I mean, trust me, man, I had to go play in the NFC North. It plays a role psychologically, especially with young guys. Once you play in the league for a while, guys get used to it, no big deal, because you travel so much, you play late into the season. But in college, especially if you're playing SMU, you don't play in weather like that very often. It can play, at least it'll take you a while to adapt to and acclimate to it in the game. And, like I said, that could be just advantage enough for Penn State to jump on top of them.
All right, I'm going to give CJ some props here. Early this year, he said that SMU was one of those teams he thought had a sneaky good team. Here they are in the playoffs 14 weeks later, CJ. You sticking with SMU all the way, or is it time for James Franklin to finally win something here?
Well, now would be the time, if ever, for James Franklin to win a meaningful football game, and I think he gets it done. I do. Playing at home, playing in the conditions that he's relatively used to compared to the two teams. Look, SMU's been very dangerous, especially since they made the switch over to Kevin Jennings. You look at who they have on their offensive line. Look, a lot of these guys were at a Texas or an Oklahoma or a big-time SEC program before saying, you know what, I want to be closer to home. I want to get a different opportunity perhaps. They've all kind of had a nice little melting pot at SMU, and that's led for a really successful season, especially year one in the Power Four. But I think it's going to come down to the running game, Nick Singleton over there at Penn State. And I tell you what, I was very quick to abandon the Drew Allard train last year. I think I'm jumping back on it. I think I've been back on it for a little bit. I've been a closet writer. I haven't necessarily been vocal about it, but I want to come out right now and say, look, I'm a believer in some of the magic of Drew Allard, quarterback there.
Wow.
Well, there you go. I'm going with Penn State for the same reason that Rod's going with them, guys. I just think the ultimately, even James Franklin can't. Even James Franklin cannot mess this up, right? Surely,
you would think.
100,000 people. SMU hasn't seen anything like that. Not. I mean, SMU hasn't seen anything like that in 25 years since the death penalty.
Right.
You know, so I just feel like that's. But then again, it's James Franklin. I just put it out there. He's 3-17 against top 10 teams. Not that SMU is a top 10 team right now, but they're on the cusp of it at least. It's also a show me game too for the ACC. I think, just like the Clemson game is. Does the ACC really deserve two spots? That could have, that could have this. This is a game that could have repercussions in next year's college playoff game on how they seed them and how they look at the totality of these conferences. All right, let's move forward now to the game that follows the one for Texas. That's Ohio State, Tennessee. Like the one in Happy Valley and State College, PA, this is going to be a freeze-a-thon in Columbus. Not sure what to say here. I think that this could be one of those 10-7 games. I really do believe that because I don't think either offense is particularly good right now. And I think that they both want to rely on their defense. Ohio State has a good defense, one of the best in the country, actually.
Yeah,
they're very veteran. It wasn't their defense, though, that lost it to Michigan. It was their offense, right? Tennessee is very similar. They've been very particular about scoring just about 20 to 24 points. Tennessee very similar to Texas, actually, in some ways. Heavy on their defense and then score enough on offense. CJ, I'll start with you on this one. Which direction you going? Tennessee on the road or Ohio State in the shoe?
Well, I feel like I should pull out my phone and ask Siri heads or tails because that's basically going to be what kind of Will Howard we get. That's kind of the conversation it's been or in the season it's been for Will Howard. You look back at the Oregon game, a slide with no time left. You look back at, some of those key moments in previous years against Texas, the red zone. I mean, some of those big game-changing, altering moments fall on his shoulders, and for the most part, they haven't been pretty. Can Ohio State do enough elsewhere to overcome what might be a struggle for them? I think that defense for Tennessee is tremendous. I do think Tennessee is also going to pack the horseshoe. I'm not going to doubt their fan base one bit. If this game is close, a 10-7 game, that fits Tennessee and what they want to do very much, in my opinion. I just think that there's too much talent. There's not a Jeremiah Smith on Tennessee sideline, and that's where I think at the end of the day, you can say 50-50 it out until best player on the field can't come down with it anymore. I like Ohio State to come away with it, but it's going to be close.
Rod, we could literally be looking at 3 of the 4 best running backs in college football. Dylan Sampson at Tennessee, Keyshawn Judkins at Ohio State, Travion Henderson at Ohio State, obviously Ashton Jeanty, one of those, but over at Boise. But is this going to be who's able to run the ball the best? tonight? What do you think?
Yeah, it's just that, Ohio State, basically anybody except Michigan. I mean, Ohio State usually is they're going to have the talent advantage at premium positions too. But you're talking about running back, but that's not the case necessarily at quarterback. And Will Howard, really admire what he's done, but I used to always say either he's going to be Will the Thrill Howard or Will Spill the Pill Howard. Depending on which guy you get can really determine your fate ultimately as a team. I'll take Ohio State. I think, in this matchup with the running game, I think you'll get a Will Howard that can manage the game. And that's basically what Ohio State needs. They get him in this matchup managing the game, they'll be fine. They're going to need him to go be more of a playmaker later on, I think, in the playoffs for them to advance. But in this matchup, I'll take Ohio State, man. They got the talent advantage. And like I said, I think ultimately the weather and the style of play may benefit Ohio State.
Man, that's interesting because I'm the exact the style of play I think edges to Tennessee over Ohio State, because I think Tennessee is more of a hard-nosed team than Ohio State. So this weather, I think weather like this, Rod, I will ask you this. Do you think weather like this that they're going to play in tonight it gives more of a lead to the team that's better in the trenches, or it amplifies it maybe, or no? Because both SMU and Penn State, I think there's a disparity. I think Tennessee, Ohio State, there's not a huge disparity, but I still think Tennessee actually may be better, especially because Ohio State's had some injuries on the offensive line.
That is fair.
I'm wondering, but is it pronounced more on the lines during these cold weather games, or no? What do you think?
I think, I'm with you. I do agree with that, though. Cold weather games. I think the advantage you have on the lines is even more, I think it's more pronounced, as you said. I do think it's more glaring. But I don't know who has a distinct advantage. Maybe it is Tennessee in this matchup. Then they're on the road. I'll take the running game of Ohio State over maybe the running game of Tennessee overall, though. And
that's fair. That's fair because they rely so heavily on one guy, Dylan Sampson, whereas Ohio State tries to move things around and mix it up a little bit. All right, guys, that's the predictions there for the Tennessee-Ohio State game. I'm taking Tennessee, by the way, in that one. I think it's going to be like, I don't know, I'm going to go 20-17. And then we're going to predict on Sunday morning whether or not Ryan Day is still going to be the head coach at by that time. We'll see about that tomorrow, I guess. All right, guys, last thing I want to mention with you guys, we've always taken the time to talk about the games on a weekend, but there's not as many games. I want to ask you one other thing. CJ, you and I have been following the portal very closely. Rod, you've been looking at it as well. And it's very clear right now that Texas Tech is all in the portal. And we just talked about how SMU made hay and made it into the college football playoff. TCU's already been in the college football playoff. Texas has been in twice. Texas Tech and Texas A&M have not. Is this one of those situations right now where Texas Tech is trying to maybe leapfrog some people, or have they already been leapfrogged and that's why they're a little testy right now and doing so much in the portal? What's your takeaway on that a little bit?
I certainly think they've been leapfrogged, right? You look at SMU, a team that was a G5 just up until this year, now in the top 12 of the entire country, and it only took 1 year for SMU. And you knew this was going to be the case, and you see white schools in the state of Texas that had a say in whether or not SMU joined the Big 12 or not, wanted to keep them a step below. Because the minute that they could say, yeah, we're a Power 4, we're going to compete, we have the same access to the college football playoff as a Texas and Oklahoma and Arkansas and A&M. This was going to happen. Now, is it sustainable? We'll see, but SMU is certainly going to be there. Now it's up to Tech and A&M to figure out how to get up to that same level. Because, again, when TCU had its run, it was great. It was a great Cinderella story, but it wasn't sustainable year after year. Yeah. And partially because of that, they didn't have kind of that infrastructure in place to sustain the portal, NIL, everything else. It came very quickly, obviously, with Sonny Dykes. I think you're going to see this level of SMU, whether it just be corralling all the DFW transfers from other programs again. That's kind of been the blueprint for this roster construction. I think that's going to be the case for SMU moving forward. They're going to be contenders in the ACC. But you look at what Tech's doing now they're making a play. They're saying this Big 12 is wide open. Let's go see what we can do.
Let me ask you point blank, Rod.
Yeah.
Who makes the college football playoff first? Texas Tech or Texas A&M?
Oh man. Honestly, the path for Texas Tech is easier than the path for A&M. I feel like that's crazy to say that, but because of the SEC, I don't know if they can win the SEC because obviously you know how tough that is because that's a path for A&M. And I guess the other path would be one of the other 2 or 3 best teams. That's still not that easy considering where the SEC is right now. Man, that's tough. I hate to diss the Aggies like that. I'm gonna say the Aggies, just so I don't disrespect them like that. I'm gonna say it's pretty close even because in the SEC you're gonna get 3 to 4 teams. They only got 3 this year, but most of the time they're gonna be trying to get 4 teams in there from the SEC. And can the Aggies be one of the best 4? The Big 12, you gotta either win that damn thing or that's pretty much it. You're gonna win it, and if you don't win the Big 12, then you're SOL. Big 12 getting a little bit tougher with all the teams they just brought in. I don't know. So I'll say it's close to even, man. I'll say it's pretty close to even. I'll throw it out there. I know. I don't want to disrespect. Because the Aggies got money. And I know Texas Tech is starting to sling around money. The Aggies been having money. Is not their issue. One of the biggest issues for everybody else is, do we have the – everybody's right now admiring the Cinderella story for SMU. Why? Because they were able to fundraise, all right, enough money where they don't even need the revenue from the television deal, from the conference revenue for 9 years. They're like, no, we got enough money. We'll handle it ourselves. We don't need y'all's money. And they were able to, as a group, they were able to obviously create this, this surge of fundraising. Texas Tech's doing the same thing right now. A&M don't got their problem. A&M's problem is hiring the right coach. Talent ain't even really there. They got talent too. They can get talent. They got to hire the right coach so they can get the right culture. So I would say they're close. Texas Tech can't have the right coach either for their specific situation, right? Because Tech's in a different situation, even than SMU and even than TCU, because they're in Fort Worth, right? And they're in Dallas. Those are different places to recruit these days in the transfer portal era than being out in West Texas. It is. It's just very different. Everybody's got to figure out where they fit now in the new landscape. And I don't think Texas Tech has figured it out yet. They just figured out, listen, we got to spend money. All right, we know that much. But A&M, they don't have to worry about the money part. The money part's easy for them. They got that figured out. They got other issues.
I got to be honest. I'm going to tell you all this. I think next year, if you look forward, I think Texas Tech and Baylor may be 1-2 in preseason in Big 12.
Wow.
Really, I think it's possible that Baylor makes the college football playoff before A&M. I mean, you look at what A&M's done in the portal. They've improved their wide receiving core, but and have they really improved themselves appreciably at quarterback? I mean, I don't know. And they lost. They're losing a ton on the defensive front. So I think A&M's at least 2 years out from doing it, and I think Tech or Baylor is going to win the Big 12 next year.
Wow.
So K-State is a possibility in Utah, but I mean, is it Iowa State spit the bid again? I mean, I just don't feel like they have the linemen. I don't know.
Colorado's going to lose everything. So
Colorado's gone because, I mean, no offense to Dion, but Travis Hunter and Shadir Sanders, Caden Salter is not Shadir Sanders. He lost the job at Tennessee. So, all right, that's going to do it for this morning's Saturday conversation. Thank you all for checking in and listening to us as well. Thanks also to our friends over at Duck Camp for sponsoring it. Duck Camp is made for people that live for the moments out there where there are fish to catch, birds to hunt, time to kill, and football to watch. They like doing all that stuff, so they built a company centered on it, based in Austin, and dedicated to giving people best-in-class hunting and fishing gear. Duck Camp gear has been tested from the backcountry of Alaska to the dove fields of Texas, also ready to keep you comfortable on those game days. It will stand up to the toughest of conditions, but also happily sit down beside a fire and drink a few cold ones if that's more your speed. Shop hunting gear today at duckcamp.com. Also, thank you to the folks at Duck Camp for sponsoring On Texas Football all season long. All right, Rod and CJ, I guess I'll see you guys a little bit later today. We have a preview game Texas tailgate coming up around 11 o'clock this morning. We also have our watch with us as well as the post-game show. You guys, good luck today, and let's give a little hook 'em for the Texas Longhorns today. Hook 'em.
Hook 'em horns.